Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now over to our social affairs editor, Jackie Long, who's in Dublin ahead of this week's crucial referendum. Jackie.
Welcome to Ireland, where voters go to the polls on Friday for what will be Ireland's sixth referendum on the issue of abortion in 35 years. There can be few issues so intensely personal and yet so political too. The question this time is whether to repeal the Eighth Amendment, which in effect enshrines into the Constitution the rights to life of the unborn child alongside the rights of the mother. Now, it means effectively that all abortion is banned in Ireland unless in the cases of where mothers where there is a risk to life to mothers. Now, we also know that 3,500 women, on average, Irish women, travel to the UK every year to end their pregnancies. We've been hearing from two women. The first, Siobhan Donohues. She and her husband were told that their unborn baby would not survive, and so they embarked on the long journey to the Women's Hospital in Liverpool. Horrick O'Brien has been speaking to her.
Under the Braehead Cross, Siobhan Donohues tells us her story, close to her home in South Dublin.
My story took place in 2011 and I found out I was pregnant for the third time, and I was delighted. I always wanted to have 3 children, and we were going along fine, getting used to the idea of having our new baby until we went for our 20-week anomaly scan. And that's when everything changed, because we were told that our baby had a condition called anencephaly. And this is a condition where the top half of the baby's head has never formed. We were devastated to hear this. You know, our whole future as we had seen it just vanished in that minute. And we were then told that if we wanted to end this pregnancy early, we wouldn't be able to do that in Ireland because of the Eighth Amendment.
The consultant was not allowed to refer her to an English hospital for an abortion. Siobhan and her husband were given information about the Liverpool Women's Hospital. They made their own appointment as private patients.
So that meant we had to go home and book flights and book a hotel and see if we could get somebody to mind our 2 other children, and arrange all of these logistics that you shouldn't really have to think about when you're dealing with the fact that your baby is going to die. We were broken-hearted, and we felt like we were sneaking out of our country. That's the bit that's hard to reconcile. Yeah. Because you'll get over a grief, and you'll move on from your grief, and you know, your grief will lessen as time goes on. But it's the sting that's left from that feeling of being forced to look elsewhere when you needed help. That's what really gets to me.
On the 29th of September 2011, the couple boarded an early morning Ryanair flight from Dublin to Liverpool.
Yeah, it's just, you're doing something very private. You're making a very private decision for yourself and your family. And then you have the juxtaposition of that with the, you know, it was a beautiful sunny weekend that weekend. I remember going over to Liverpool. It was 25 degrees, bit of an Indian summer at the end of September. And there was this hen party, and they were all happy and laughing, and you were just like, oh, God.
On the plane?
On the plane.
Yeah. This
is the other side of this. You're leaving your own medical team behind you. You're going to meet a medical team that you don't know.
Yeah.
I'd never been to Liverpool. I didn't know anything about Liverpool, and never had no experience of it. And you're being forced to do that, to leave people that you know, that you've been used to being under their care, to meet another team who are now going to take care of you because your country can't.
They got a taxi from the airport to the hospital. She was given drugs to induce the pregnancy and had to return in 48 hours.
So we were walking around like we were any other tourist couple, except we were carrying the secret of the reason we were there. We just had to put in that time, ringing home to see how everybody was doing, you know, crying down the phone to my mum, just wishing that they were there, that you could have your family, that they weren't going to get to meet this child.
Siobhan returned to hospital and delivered the baby. They called him Thomas Joseph, or TJ. Afterwards, she was recuperating in a room dubbed the Shamrock Suite in the hospital. There was a knock on the door. It was an elderly Catholic priest offering to pray with her. Although this man represented part of the reason she was there, Instead of judging her, he offered her comfort.
It was an acknowledgement that this should be our decision, I think, and that nobody else had the right to judge you on your decision that you make for your family. So I found that very powerful at the time.
Yeah.
It moved me to tears. It still does at times, you know.
Is it?
Oh yeah. I found it very, very powerful.
Yeah.
And he will always have a special place in my heart for doing that.
That priest.
Yeah.
Siobhan flew home, leaving TJ's remains in the care of the hospital. He was cremated a few days later.
As the plane took off and flew out over the Mersey, looking down and just whispering goodbye to him.
Yeah.
Just this sense of, it was one thing after another of all of these things you felt you shouldn't have to do.
Yeah.
Like leaving your baby behind you.
According to Siobhan, hers is the story of the unbearable logistics of smuggling out pain. A few weeks later, a brown UPS delivery truck pulled up outside her house.
2-3 weeks later, I was standing at my front door collecting a package from a courier, and it was my baby's ashes. Just this moment of just me and this courier, and this was it. This was how I got my baby back. Again, a very surreal type of moment, and just kind of the whole, really that's the word that I think covers the entire experience for me at the time. It just was so hard to get your head around the fact that you had to do this.
Yeah.
Because this was your only option if you didn't want to continue. And I feel that's not right, and that should change.
Well, I'm joined now by Vicki Walsh, who took a very different decision when her unborn daughter was diagnosed with what she describes as a life-limiting condition. Vicki, tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
So 3.5 years ago, I got the terrible news that my little baby was sick and she wasn't going to live for very long. We got that news at 24 weeks, and it was heartbreaking.
And you decided to go ahead, though?
Yes.
And take the baby to term.
Yeah, the doctor did recommend, he did say we could pop to England if that would be an option for us, but it was never our right to take her life or to end her life, and it wouldn't have given us any healing. We loved our little girl and we wanted to give her every chance possible.
But you knew effectively that she wasn't going to survive. I mean, how difficult was it to decide? Did you never think, I will go to the UK?
Well, we do know cases of these babies. They're not always, as bleak as they seem. We do know that. We know of little Kathleen Rose. She has trisomy 13 and she's now 11. So we had heard these stories. So we did have hope. And yes, there was times that I felt I couldn't carry on. That's why I feel the 8th Amendment protected us, because it gave us that time to, on my very bad days where I felt I couldn't carry on and it was too difficult, it gave me time to be with her and remember what it was all about, and that was just about loving her and spending time with her.
I suppose that was a very, very personal decision. Many people will regard it as a very brave decision, but other women will say what this vote is about is allowing them to make their choice. What's wrong with that?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but that's not what this vote is about at all whatsoever. The politicians are using sick babies and cases of forced pregnancies to make people feel that they need to vote yes for this very unrestricted, horrific proposal. The proposal is horrific, and they could do better. They could target these cases and do better for these cases.
The proposal is fundamentally about 12 weeks, isn't it, after the repeal of the 8th?
Yeah, 12 weeks unrestricted and then up to 24 weeks, which is 6 months on vague health grounds.
But the point is, I suppose, you have taken this decision yourself. Why should it be illegal for a woman who feels she can't do what you did?
So it's, like I said, there's no winners in this story where you have sick babies. There's no winners. There really, really isn't. But the government need to stop using sick babies to guilt people into going for a yes vote.
But it's a motive on both sides, isn't it?
It is, but I mean, you're talking about healthy mothers and healthy babies, and it's just horrific. It's more liberal than the UK even, and we know from their stats. 706 babies in 2016 diagnosed with Down syndrome aborted under grounds E. It's horrific.
So we may talk again tomorrow, because we will be in Dublin for a live debate on the abortion referendum tomorrow night, where we will be hoping to hear from both sides. But from now, that's it from us.
Ireland is in the grip of one of the most difficult issues for the country, a decision on whether to remove the 8th Amendment from its constitution, which gives equal right to life to mothers and the unborn. In other words, a ban on abortion. Friday's referendum looks to be finely balanced, and such are the passions aroused that many of the Irish diaspora are flying home from all over the world to cast their crucial vote. The Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, is backing a yes vote and has said it's only a matter of time before a woman in Ireland dies as a result of using abortion pills bought online, something that is itself illegal. If passed, Ireland's Parliament, the Dáil, would then begin the process of legislating on the proposed termination of pregnancies at up to 12 weeks. And it would make Ireland more liberal than the north of the country, where the Westminster's 1967 Abortion Act does not apply. Ireland was the first country in the world to legalise same-sex marriage through popular vote. So is Ireland, once seen as one of Europe's most socially conservative countries, now about to undergo a more radical change.
We need change, we need choice. Vote yes to repeal the 8th on the 25th of May. You can make a difference.
Here on Dublin's Henry Street is the culmination of months of campaigning and bitter debate. In 3 days' time, Ireland will be voting on whether to repeal the 8th Amendment in the country's constitution, a law that criminalises abortion.
Let's win repeal, let's win abortion rights, let's win bodily autonomy for pregnant people.
Rita Harold has spent most of the last 6 years campaigning for abortion rights.
Do you really think it's acceptable that somebody who doesn't have the money to travel abroad to access abortion could face 14 years in prison while the Constitution...
Having or administering an abortion carries a hefty prison sentence, but many in Ireland support the law as it stands. A no campaign has been set up metres away.
Thank you. Are you voting yes on the 25th?
And Lucy Kelly has travelled down from Northern Ireland specially to give her support.
We are all very positive. Obviously a lot of work still needs to be done, you know, particularly in these final days. So if we are out in the streets telling people what the legislation actually means, what repeal actually means, and the fact that abortion is in no way pro-woman.
The Irish government has proposed legislation allowing abortion on request up until 12 weeks of pregnancy, half the time in Britain, but without any restrictions.
I would like to think people are, you know, quite shocked and disgusted at a 12-week limit for abortion, you know, for any reason. You don't help women by killing their babies. You know, for a progressive, compassionate society, we should be providing women with real life-affirming support, real crisis pregnancy support.
So this is what the abortion pills look like. You get one mifepristone, which you take on the first day.
But for many Irish women, crisis pregnancy has meant taking things into their own hands. Rita has met many who felt the need to break the law by ordering abortion pills online.
The stories that you hear from people when they're telling you they need abortion pills are, some of them, extremely distressing. You know, I spoke to women who already had children, who were really struggling economically to provide for the children that they had. I spoke to women in violent relationships. I spoke to very, very young women.
According to one study shown to the Irish government, more than 7,000 Irish women have risked imprisonment and bought pills since 2010, and numbers are on the rise.
And then, of course, the other big section is, I need an abortion with pills.
It's estimated that 5 new women every day order their pills from charities such as Women on Web. The pills are approved by the World Health Organization and considered safe under medical supervision. Rita offers help to women trying to order the pills, even though this is illegal under Irish law.
Your final page is instructions on how to use abortion pills safely. It describes very simply and in an easy to understand way how to use the pills, which is more complicated than people might think. It's not paracetamol, you don't just take it and go. It's inducing essentially the same as a miscarriage. You're going to have contractions, you're going to have pain, bleeding, etc. Those are all ordinary symptoms.
But where abortion is legal, like in Britain, taking the pills without medical supervision is banned.
What would we have if we didn't have this option? We would have women putting their health in danger in other ways. Women who say that they've considered trying to harm themselves in a way that's severe enough to end the pregnancy, but not severe enough to kill them. That's the reality of banning abortion.
Yeah, that's fine.
It doesn't have to be an extreme situation for the pills to go wrong. Siobhan, not her real name, is from a conservative part of rural Ireland. After getting pregnant early on in a relationship, she decided to try the pills.
Myself and my partner, you know, kind of weighed up the pros and cons of either, you know, becoming parents or deciding against it, and ultimately we decided that the relationship was too young.
But with no doctor to consult, Siobhan researched abortion pills on the web.
I had read online and I had listened to women's personal stories on YouTube and stuff like that, and a lot of people had mentioned that it was nothing more than a bad period and stuff like that. The second set of pills, after about half an hour, I started to get very severe cramping. The cramping kind of came first, and then the blood started coming, and I had laid towels and stuff on my bed, but I soaked through all of them while I was asleep. And I did have to get up a few times during the night to change my bed sheets because they had soaked all the way through. Yeah, so there was a lot of blood involved.
Siobhan kept her ordeal to herself until she became involved in a conversation with someone very close.
We were having a conversation about the upcoming referendum, and they referred to women going for abortion as bitches going to England. Like, I was trying to reason with this person that, like, you know, like, there's reasons why people have abortions. So I admitted to them that I had had an abortion, and you could see on this person's face that, like, it really changed how they would view the whole thing. Like, it just gave them a whole different perspective on it.
For the No campaign, the use of online pills in Ireland is not an argument for repeal. Professor Patricia Casey is a practicing psychiatrist and one of the campaign's leading figures.
In the UK, women take illegal abortion pills as well. They're sold in the UK as well. They're sold all over Europe. In the whole of Europe, bar one or two countries, has very liberal abortion laws. So I do not buy into the argument that allowing for abortions in Ireland will stop women taking illegal abortion pills. My issues are that I believe every person in the womb is a human being, and that every human being has an inalienable, a fundamental right to life. If a young person, a baby in the womb, male or female, cannot be born, they can't exercise any other rights.
Information on the no vote? Would you like to have you? Okay, thank you very much. Information on the no vote?
It's just crazy.
It's a position that the No campaign is taking to the streets.
But when you legalise abortion on demand, you actually create a demand for abortion. I just see abortion as completely inhumane. It kills the unborn child while they're in their mother's womb.
But in urban areas like Dublin, the No message seems to be facing resistance.
Do you think there should be restrictions on abortion, or do you think it should be freely available for everyone?
I think it should be a free choice.
That's very upsetting, sir. All the best. That's very upsetting, though.
Whichever way Ireland votes, such is the divide, many people will be deeply upset. And the result will resonate throughout the country for years to come. Well, joining me from Dublin are Breda O'Brien, who's a columnist with the Irish Times and a No campaigner, and Ivana Bacik, who is a Labour senator, barrister, and representative of the Yes campaign. Good evening to both of you. First of all, Ivana Bacik, you are campaigning for legal abortion up to 12 weeks. But on scans of fetuses at 12 weeks, you can see a heartbeat, you can sometimes tell the sex. There is definitely movement. Can you understand how that might be deeply upsetting and completely unacceptable to many, many people?
Well, Kirsty, everyone will have their own view on abortion, and certainly I'm a mother myself. I have 2 young daughters. But what I'm campaigning for, and what the Yes campaign is calling for, is a vote yes on Friday to repeal the 8th Amendment. That is to remove out of the Constitution the absolute bar on making any reform to our abortion law. And the reality is, and I've been canvassing now extensively around Dublin and outside of Dublin, the reality is that most people now in Ireland do accept that our law is too restrictive, because having the ban in the Constitution means that we as legislators cannot legislate to provide access to abortion even where a woman or girl has been raped or faces a serious risk to her health or has had a devastating diagnosis of fatal fetal abnormality. So in order to lift that absolute bar, we need to vote yes on Friday. After that, the Oireachtas would then be free to legislate, and the government has set out a framework of compassionate and sensible legislation which would allow for abortion in a range of circumstances, but subject to a very tightly controlled legislative framework. But the first thing, and the message for anyone who is undecided as yet as to how they will vote, is that to make any change in our law on abortion, we have to vote yes on Friday to remove the 8th Amendment. It is an absolute bar to any reform, and currently our law on abortion is among the most restrictive in the world.
Let me just talk to Breda O'Brien for a moment. If a father was to rape his daughter, and as a result of that rape there is pregnancy, that, in the view of the No campaign, would not be grounds for an abortion.
I think the kind of appalling situation that you've described is just so impossible for people even to think about. Like, I'm a mother of teenagers and I find it impossible. But the question that we're being asked here is not about those exceptional and tragic cases. You mentioned that abortion will be freely available up to 12 weeks, but it's also available up to viability on very similar grounds to what you have in Britain, Ground C, which is where, as you know, most of the abortions in Britain, 97% of them, happen on the grounds of a threat to the mental health, an unspecified mental health threat to the mother. And we're going to have that here too. And I'm sorry to hear Ivana use a term like fatal fetal abnormality, because she's really talking about children with a severe life-limiting condition. And we have very good care for those women here in Ireland when they continue their pregnancies. And it's a little bit dehumanising to call them fatal fetal abnormalities. I had the privilege of accompanying a friend who had that situation, whose child lived for 9 weeks and 4 days and 3 hours. And they were very precious, and they brought out a huge amount of love in people.
Let me carry on with you, Breda, for a moment, because you say, of course, that a father raping his daughter's exceptional circumstances, but that's not really the point, it's the principle. And the principle is that would not necessarily be seen as grounds for abortion. I'm asking you, isn't it inhuman to force perhaps even a teenager to carry on through a pregnancy after a rape of what is an incestuous attack?
It is a very, very difficult situation, but I know somebody who was conceived through rape, and I can't look that woman in the eye and say, it would be better if you were dead. I also know of the case of Miss C. It's a celebrated case for all the wrong reasons here in Ireland. It was a 13-year-old who was brutally raped and who was brought to Britain by social workers because they felt that the only possible solution, the only good answer, could possibly be to give her an abortion. Now, she has gone on the record just in the last few days saying, don't use me as an excuse to introduce abortion. I regret that abortion every day of my life. I don't think I could have raised that child.
More broadly, Jess, I want to come back to Ivana in a moment, but more broadly, you know, we have a situation in Ireland where gay marriage was won on a popular vote. It is possible that this will also be won on a popular vote for the Yes campaign. Aren't the social conservatives losing ground in Ireland? Just briefly, Breda.
I don't really care if social conservatives are losing ground. I care about the fact that there is nothing about abortion that's modern or progressive, and I think that history will look back on it as quite barbaric, that we felt that we had the right as adult women to take life. And I'm not targeting that at young women in distress or older women in distress. I would never judge anybody.
Let me put this, Ivana. If you lose the vote, Ivana, on Friday, might it be a signal that actually the position is changing? You know, if you look at medical science, of course, viability is much earlier than when the 67 abortion legislation was passed in Westminster. There have been changes. That actually it may not just be so acceptable to as many people as you Yes campaigners think because of the advances in medical science.
Well, let me first of all, Kirsty, just say that, of course, I don't in any way intend to dehumanise or to make light of the terrible consequence of a diagnosis of fatal fetal abnormality. I know many people who've been through that tragic circumstance. But the issue for any couple in that situation, yes, certainly. But the point, I think, for any couple in that circumstance is to have choice to continue their medical care here at home rather than having to travel. And what the no side continually ignore is the reality that women are travelling in their thousands to England every year. The legislation the government is proposing, to answer your question, is very different to the English legislation. The test for viability and the definition of viability.
Well, thank you. I'm sure this debate...
No, excuse me, I didn't interrupt. It's far from being more liberal. It's more restrictive in every way. And currently what we have is an English solution to an Irish problem, with thousands of our women travelling abroad to access the medical care that they should be receiving with compassion here at home in their own country. That's why there are so many people travelling home to vote on Friday and why we're campaigning for a yes.
Thank you both very much for joining us tonight.